When you're out there, you don't even, they had to remind us what day it was because you don't know what month it is, what day it is, what day of the week. You have no idea. You have no idea of track that because you're not going to hump a calendar. It's just another piece of weight that you already have 90 pounds on your back. You'd rather carry more ammo or more water. So yeah, you try to be as light as possible. You didn't carry any calendars or anything like that. You had a short time calendar, but that's about it.
The 90 pounds on your back, you mentioned ammo, water. What else are you carrying that?
Oh, so the rucksack itself, we each of us carried two claymore mines, two trip flares. We either have 100 or 200. I carried 200 rounds of M60 ammo. I had 20 magazines of 18 rounds each magazine for my M16. Whatever we eventually good story. We stole some. Hammocks and we were humping that. But other than that, a poncho liner is about all you had to lay on the ground.
Yeah.
During monsoon season, it's nice to get above the ground, but it was really not proper Army issue, that's for sure. Hammocks, we did use those and never had any problem with that. But the Army definitely didn't want us to use those because they put you above the ground in the perimeter. The first thing they did when I got in country is they taped my frags up because in triple canopy jungle, you're not going to throw a frag. It'll just bounce right back to you. So they taped the frags up and put them in the bottom of your rucksack. Water, so you carried about 6 to 9 quarts of water, depending on how much you wanted or needed. We carried LERPs, which are the long range patrol dehydrated food. So I liked chicken and rice and chili. That was pretty good. The other ones there, beans and rice and chicken and rice and beef and rice and chili con carne, and there might be another one that I'm missing. But
Well,
so
the famous, well, I think with the sea rats, the famous ham and lima beans. I don't know if they had that with the lerps or not. So,
no, no, I don't
no.
remember that one. Carried usually a couple, either 2 or 3 bars of C4 plastic explosive for a lot of reasons. We used it to heat. We'd take a piece of C4 plastic explosive and
Yeah.
we would light it. Very deadly if you inhaled the fumes, so you had to be really careful. But it burned really with a really nice blue flame, so you couldn't see it at night. So you could heat up your water, pour it in your dehydrated your LERP, and cook your food.
How old were you when you were in Vietnam?
I had just turned 20,
And when did you arrive in Vietnam?
right after Christmas in 1969. Yeah,
So the end of
right that
69.
week between Christmas and New Year's, right in that time frame.
Wow. Did you fly into Tan Son Nhut or Benoit?
Benoit. Yeah,
Benoit. And then
we
to
were on a
the,
commercial airline from Oakland, so I flew from Detroit to Oakland, and then I think it might have been American Airlines. It was very somber, not much talking at all. Everybody knew what they were in for, so I think everybody was just the anticipation was kind of made everybody very low key. I do remember the pilot saying we're approaching Vietnam, and so hang on. And I think he dove from 40,000 feet down to to the runway. I mean, it was a dive. It was definitely a dive. And so we landed, and yeah, welcome to Vietnam. The joke was, oh, you'll get training when you get to Vietnam. Once you get in country, you'll get the real training. Yeah, they pushed you through in those days. In this is 1969, they were losing a lot of guys, and so they were just pushing guys through basic and AIT. Um, and I think it was just a get them in, get them out, get them not necessarily trained up for combat, but get them in shape and get them to follow orders and that type of thing.
wow.
And then they sent you to Vietnam, but the training was a bunch of BS. There's no training once you got in country. I literally landed in Benoit. They had a big long table, they found my orders where I was supposed to report to. They said, take the next chopper to Quan Loy, and they pointed me to where to go. I took a Chinook, we call them shit hooks, but Chinook to Quan Loy, where our rear area was in the first calf. I reported to our top there, my introduction to him, and he basically said, dump everything out of your duffel bag and put them in this box, and we'll store it away. And they issued the rucksack we were just talking about, and all the everything we needed, the claymores and the trips and the frags and the ammo and the M16 and all the other stuff you needed, canteens for water and everything. And he said the next chopper out, we'll join your company. So literally within a day, I was out in the field. Yeah,
Wow.
day and a half probably.
Wow.
I mean, it was that fast. And training, no training. On the
Wow.
job training.
What do you remember about the moment when it came time to say goodbye to your wife and daughter?
Oh, it was tough. It was yeah, it was very tough. We took a lot of pictures and stuff, just in case I didn't come back. My daughter was what, 4 months old, 3 or 4 months old at the time.
Wow.
So yeah, I carried a picture of her. The first Cav issued these things. They have waterproof little um, compartments like Ziplocs almost.
Right.
I
Yeah.
carried a picture of her in that. And then in the rucksack, one thing I didn't tell you, they give you an M60 ammo can, which are waterproof. And so they fit perfect. That ammo can fit perfectly at the bottom of the rucksack within the frame of the rucksack itself. And then in there, you could put things like this to keep it dry during
Wow.
monsoon season, which is constant raining.
So,
So I kept a picture of my daughter with me at all times, and the one thing that I promised myself was that I wasn't going to be a victim, and I was going to come home to raise my daughter. So that she was literally my lifeline to come home safely as if I could come home alive. That's your goal. Your goal is to come home alive. And
yeah.
that really was the essence of everything every day was like just stay alive. And sometimes it means you have to be the meanest son of a bitch in the valley to come home alive. When you get in country, you haven't really experienced a firefight or death or anything. So you're on edge, but it doesn't seem all that bad until your first firefight. And in your first firefight, you realize that wow, this this changes everything. That it changes everything. And now the fear sets in. The fear factor hasn't set in yet until you had a firefight. And you see people die. Then my first firefight, we didn't lose anybody, but that fear factor is set in, and now you are wide awake almost even all night long. The least little thing will wake you up. So you're constantly on edge. I walked point the whole time I was there. Katola, our machine gunner, called him Killer Katola. Katola, my machine gunner in Tex, who was walking point, convinced me that walking point would be a good thing. And he said, well, look around at these guys. You want to put your life in their hands, or would you want to be in control of your life, your destiny? Okay, well, that kind of makes sense. And as it turns out, Tex was a damn good point man, and he taught me everything he knew. So I walked
Uh,
assistant. So the 2 days in Vietnam, I was walking assistant point, and then I took over the point position. And Tex became the squad leader, and I took over the point position.
I've heard that before. That guys say they preferred walking point because they felt like they had more control
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
situation.
yeah. If you think about it, it sounds crazy, but if you think you're good enough, and you look around the other guys and say, well, maybe I'm the best one to do this. Yeah, you take that chance.
What are the skills or the traits that a person needs to have to be successful walking point? If suppose, just as a mental exercise, you've been charged with, you've got 30 young soldiers in front of you, and you've been charged with determining which among them should walk point. What traits would you look for in them as you're watching them in the field, as you're watching them interact? What traits would you look for to say this is the one who's most likely to be successful walking point?
Smart, being somebody smart, can learn quickly, someone who has who very pragmatic type of person, who's smart enough to learn quickly, and learn the survival skills you need to walk point. You need to obviously need to know how to work a compass. You need to know what an azimuth is. You need to know, how to get to point A to point B and get your guys to point A to point B. And you have to be absolutely aware of what's going on around you. We never walked trails ever. Well, the one time I had to walk a trail, I met three NVA face to face. That's another
Wow.
whole story, the big story. But in when you walk point, we broke brush. So basically, I had a machete in my right hand and my M16 in my left hand, and we broke brush almost the whole time I was there. So it was hard work, but you keep an eye on what's going on around you. You have to be situationally aware of everything around you at all times. You look for signs that the NVA is around. The day I was wounded and Bob and Larry Fish were killed, I had bent down because we had walked. Bob was actually walking point. There's a whole story behind that. He only had to walk point for 1 or 2 days, but unfortunately, I'd bent down. There had been a little sapling. The NVA used to use razor wire to cut off saplings right at the ground. They would saw those saplings off, and then they'd build fighting positions. They'd dig a fighting position, and they'd cover it, and then they'd put dirt on top of that. And I knelt down to take a look at it, and I told Bob to hold up right there and don't move. And I was looking at it, and I thought, "Well, there's got to be a fighting position here somewhere." And I was going to bring Bob over to look at it to show him, hey, this is what it looks like. And he had wandered off maybe about 10 feet more, 10 or 15 feet more further, which I didn't tell him to do. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. He was killed instantly. And then I got behind a tree, and I brought Fish behind the tree with me and started firing from the right side of the tree. Everybody got online, and the very intense firefight. Obviously, we were in the kill zone of that bunker that was there. The firefight, it started to get very intense. Bob was killed, and I wanted Fish, and we get the radio to get the rest of the platoon online, see if they can get them up here. So I had reached across. He was on his stomach, and he wasn't firing. He was just frozen in fear, I think. And the handset, this is the handset actually. The handset was laying in front of him. I rolled over and I grabbed the handset. As soon as I grabbed the handset, there was just a volume of fire. It severed the handset, and a round went through his right eye and right out the back of his head. He was killed instantly. And then they severed this handset from the radio. And then a B-40 RPG exploded above us and just rained shrapnel down on me and him. So I was hit with shrapnel, and then the AK round that went through his right eye went across my wrist, and there's a vein there, and nicked that vein, so I was bleeding. And holding the handset, I couldn't communicate with the rest of the platoon, so we were kind of stuck at this particular point. So
And it's just that it was no, now it's you, basically you're alone at this point?
no, my squad had my
Oh, okay,
squad.
you've got your squad. Okay.
Yeah, and they were firing. They were all firing. We were all
So
online
what's that
firing.
for?
I was
For?
just that I was a little bit ahead of to the right and a little ahead of them because
Okay.
we had walked there.
At
So
this
they were,
point,
yeah,
there are 4 or 5 guys who are returning fire.
yeah,
Um, of
yeah. We were
57 or
we were
down.
down we were down quite a few. So yeah, we had a small squad. So yeah, they were returning fire. And again, they would fire and then they would let up because you don't want to expend all of your ammo. And so they'd let up and then the NVA would let up. Our Kit Carson scout at the time, Fook, had gone over to my right and he was trying to get them to surrender. He actually was trying to get them to surrender. It was kind of funny, and every time he talked, they would fire him up. He was behind a tree. They'd fire him up, so they weren't having any of it. Um, so I had another guy, one of our short timers, name is Daryl. He came in. He had taken an AK round across his cheek, and I had one bandage that I'd bandaged my arm up and put a tourniquet on, and then he came in. How he got behind me, I don't know, but I put my other bandage. I had a field bandage. I put it around him and wrapped his head up. And I said, "We have no radio." I showed him. I said, "We have no radio. We have no way of getting you back to a medevac. You need a medevac because you're losing a lot of blood." And I was losing a lot of blood too. I said, "We have no way of knowing if you go back to the platoon, they have no knowing whether you're an NVA or not." So he said, "I can make it back." He said, "I said you be hollering friendly the whole time you get back there," and he took off. And luckily, uh, two of the guys from the medic and another guy who was a platoon RTO came. His name was Tennessee. Came in and started helping us, and they brought a radio, and then they took me out because me and Daryl were going to be medevaced out. I eventually ended up in Quan Loy, and they then sent me back to Firebase Terry Lynn. And when the rest of my platoon came back, they they brought this handset with them and handed it to me. And they said, "Here's your handset that you lost."
Here you're in a very intense situation. You're under heavy fire.
Right,
Tips you probably know is out immediately. Fish is out soon.
right.
You're wounded. Um,
I tried to get back. I tried to get up to Bob, by the way, several times, but the fire was just really, really intense. I could only get 2 or 3 feet from his boot, and even if I could get to his legs or his boot to try to drag him back, there's no way. There's no way I could do it. So yeah, and even the guys that came up to help me later, they said, "Can we get to Bob?" I said, "There's no way. He's right in the middle of that kill zone. You can't. There's no way you can get to him." So until
is
we get
that
more people online.
is that one of those things that you replay it over and over and over and over in
Oh,
your mind trying to get to Bob?
every day, every day. Like, could I've done anything more? He was killed instantly. And so was Larry. But yeah, yeah, yeah. You never forget that. You never forget even a minute of that, even a second of that. I mean, yeah, everything. You remember everything.
Um, this might be a dumb question, and it'll probably be a question that, really won't be possible to answer to anyone, to make sense to anyone who hasn't experienced it. But when you're in a firefight and you're in this kind of extremely intense situation where you know that, you've only got a squad, you've lost two already. Um,
Three.
oh, a third, and
Because
so
the guy that had an AK round across his cheek, and so yeah, so
so he's ineffective as well.
right.
Um, and then you're wounded. Does that, I mean, does anything happen psychologically? I mean, um, not in a sense of, this is a lost cause. I mean, do those thoughts begin to get into your head like this is a lost situation, or does that cause you to fight more intensely? Does it make any change when you compare that situation to other firefights where guys are not being hit? Does it change the kind of your psychological state as you can see that in the context of this very intense situation, the guys are getting hit and they're getting hit very rapidly?
Yeah, well, the realization, first of all, I knew instantly. that they had a fighting position that put them at an advantage. So I knew that we were at a extreme disadvantage because we were in the kill zone, their kill zone. We didn't have the cover they had. They had an AK. Usually in their fighting positions, I don't know if you've seen, the fighting positions had an entrance and an exit, or it could be either way, but they could fire out of either one of those. And what they would do, and in those fighting positions, they just put their AK above there and just firing. They keep their head down and they just fire, and that's what they were doing. Or they take a B-40 RPG and they would fire. They wouldn't fire at us. They would fire above us in the trees. So the concussion and the shrapnel and the tree shrapnel as well, everything would explode and
Wow.
create shrapnel below it. So that's what they were doing. They had if I remember correctly, there was at least two RPG explosions in that firefight, and so they were in cover and they were in a bunker, and we were not. So we were at an extreme disadvantage. So the situation at that point is that normally, if you know, and we did the other thing we didn't have was we normally carry M72 laws, and those are very powerful. So if they have B-40 RPGs. If we had a law, I would have definitely used that, but we didn't have those. So we knew we were at a disadvantage. So the best situation was to pull back and then bring in artillery or gunships and pound that position. But the problem is Bob was still up there. We could get Larry back, but and they did, but Bob was still up there in that kill zone, and it was almost impossible to reach him without losing more lives, because I'd already tried, and so we're in a very stuck situation. Yeah. So
You had been medevaced by the time they got
yeah.
by.
Yeah, I was medevac. They lowered a jungle penetrator down, and they pulled me up, and at some point they locked me in, and we were taking fire. Our medic had given me morphine, so I was like, cool. I didn't care. So they locked me in, and I could hear the AK rounds going by me and hitting the bottom of the medevac chopper because you could hear them just going thunk, 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 this plinking sound. And all
Uh,
of a sudden they locked me in, and then they pulled me up to about probably 5,000 feet or something. I don't know, enough out of the fire. And then they stopped, and then they reeled me in from there. So.
Talk about the medics.
Medics were great. So the uh, the medevac chopper, these guys go into combat situations all the time. So and they're fearless. They know what they're up against, and they do their job, and they do it very well. They were tending to me uh, taking care of that. And then we flew to Anlock, I believe. It's either Tainan or Anlock. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was Anlock. And then from Anlock, they sent me to Quan Loy, where it's a larger medevac center. And there were a lot of wounded there. I was the least wounded of all the guys that were coming in to that medevac center. So yeah, the medevac pilots are well. That's the one thing that keeps you going is that number one, you'd have that support if you get hit. That it gives you a better feeling when you're out there. If you do get hit, that you'll have the medevac people that are willing to risk their lives to come out and pick you up.
How long were you out of the bush?
Probably 2 days, 2.5 days, something like that.
What memories, when you think about those 2 days, when your wounds are being tended to, what memories stand out in your mind about those 2 days?
The biggest thing was thank God that I'm still alive. Because I thought about my daughter a lot. Tex had come in. I had come in. Our whole platoon came in to get more men, and basically we had lost a lot of guys in our platoon in general. So we had a memorial service for them, and It was just within the last that was a memorial service in from the last I think week or two of fighting in Cambodia. So
A lot of times guys say that, after you spend so much time in the bush, we've mentioned the North Vietnamese, of course, but we haven't talked about the leeches and the snakes and the mosquitoes and all the ants
oh
and
my God, yeah,
the thorns
everything.
and everything else. So
Yeah,
after and the heat and the humidity and the rain and
yeah,
so the enemy and all those other things and the mud and the filth that
yeah,
after months of that, you some guys say you become almost so cold psychologically that you could go to a memorial service like that. And of course, years later, you'll feel that. But at the time, you're so exhausted and there's almost like this huge callus over your soul that you look at that and it doesn't really even move you at that time. Is
yeah. It doesn't
your
register. It
experience at
doesn't.
all?
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And you're like um, you're numb. You are numb psychologically, and your feelings. You're numb because you've seen that. That's just that a memorial service, but you're still. I mean, you've lost guys before that, and you'll lose guys after that, and hopefully it's not you. So you're numb. More guys are going to get killed as well. You don't want to go home in a body bag. And so you have part of you that's sad and like, okay, these guys are they're going home to their families in a casket, and you're sad about that. But then you're also glad that it isn't you. You're saying to yourself, "Thank God I'm still here, and I still have to fight." So, and that's the feeling. It's like half and half, right? Like you have 50% remorse, and then 50% glad that it's not you.
After these firefights, when things are quiet now and maybe the adrenaline is, dissipating, do you guys, and you're in a place where you can talk, do you guys recount, the firefight, or do you
Oh
just
yeah, oh
you do
yeah,
recount it? What did
oh
you
yeah.
see? What did you see? What did you see? Kind of thing.
Yeah, you go over everything. Yeah, you cover everything. Yeah. I know I did with my guys. It's really hard because you're meeting these guys. You're not trained with these guys at all. The one weird thing about Vietnam is that you're all thrown in together in the theater of the war. You didn't train with each other, you didn't know each other. So when you go into those situations with a bunch of guys that you don't know, now you're realizing you know them really, you get to know them really well. You get to know everything about them really well. And one thing about my squad, and especially with Tex and Rodney, we became really good friends and brothers, I think, in war. But also, we did go over everything. We were constantly talking about what we did and how to do it better.
Right.
Constantly thinking about those things. I used to call it combat fatigue. It sets in after a while. It just sets in, and you and I had that at some point after almost successive firefights we had been in. I just like had it and was just like I had this thought. It's like, how do I know if I'm dead? So I had this weird, really weird thought. It's like, well, how do I know I could be dead right now? How do I know? So it's just pure combat fatigue. That's all it was.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then you shake it off, but you get those thoughts like, well, I could have been killed yesterday. Maybe I'm just living in this dream or something. But yeah, that's combat fatigue. We came across a trail, and it was the only way down off from uh, this hill that we were on, and it was a pretty good drop. and there was really no other way to get down other than to follow that trail down. So we called actually a dog team in. So he took a look at the situation. He goes, "No, I'm not going to walk my dog down that trail." He didn't. The guys that had dog teams in Vietnam, I think, got attached to their dogs,
Mhm.
so they were very protective. And he said, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." So he left, and I said, "All right, well, we got to do this." So we we headed out. Uh, Me at Walking Point. Tex was a squad leader at the time. I don't know who was behind me. I think Rodney was behind me with his 60. And there was a bend, and then probably about 200 feet beyond that bend that went down straight down into like some young bamboo and stuff at the bottom of that trail. But we came to that bend, and all of a sudden, right around that bend was three NVAs. Three NVA, almost face to face, probably 20 feet in front of me. The difference between me and those guys was they had their weapons on their shoulder. So the lead guy, he was as surprised as I was, kind of face to face. But I had my M16, I had it on rock and roll, and I started firing probably because of the shock, probably firing on automatic. So I went through 18 rounds pretty quickly, and then I felt kind of a push to the ground. Rodney had actually pushed me down, and I was trying to get another magazine loaded up, and he was opening up with his 60. And yeah, all three of them, we killed all three of them pretty quickly, and they didn't even have a chance to get their weapons off from their shoulder, and they were trying to jump out off from the trail into the some cover, but yeah, they never made it. But it was face to face within 20 feet of each other, so it was quick. It was um, uh, over in probably a minute because Rodney just kept firing. I probably put 200, 300 rounds down there after I fired.
And
Yeah. So it was just like that. I mean, and we were just literally face to face. So,
and your adrenaline just has to be
oh, yeah,
just
through the roof.
unbelievable.
Right. Yeah.
And so then what? So all right, so the firing stops, you realize these guys are down,
Right.
and
Well, we went.
then what
We
happens
went.
over the next few minutes?
Yeah, we went and checked. I grabbed the AK. The lead guy who was in front. I took his AK, and I pulled back the lever and ejected a round. And I took that round, and I said, I'm going to save that because that's the round would have probably hit me. So I took saved that round as a good luck piece.
So now you're getting on the Freedom Bird and down, you sit down in the Freedom Bird and that thing, I don't know how long you're there, but eventually it takes off and you're out of Vietnam airspace. What memories, if any, do you have of that flight home?
So that emotion I remember very distinctly. You are incredibly relieved and happy that you've survived, and now you're going home and going to see your family and your daughter again. So that feeling was there, but then an incredible sadness that I was thinking, wow, did I train these guys good enough to survive? Are they, I really hated leaving them because I didn't know if I'd trained them well enough to survive, for them to survive and be able to go home. So I had this sadness about, oh, did I do a good enough job for these guys? Are they going to survive? So it wasn't a sadness, but it was a deep concern that about the guys that I was leaving behind. So there was those two emotions: incredibly happy that I'm getting the hell out of there, and then really concerned that the guys that are still there to fight are going to survive. And did I train them well enough and show them enough and teach them enough to survive?